The other side to this is that we've had the historic situation where we've had the fall of the House of Biden, if you will, and that is an extraordinary, again, case study in history, right before our eyes, where party elites, unknown committees, we kind of have the usual suspects of. This is just unbelievable situation. So what happened here, Conrad? Help us put into perspective. How is it that the quote Democratic Party can use such undemocratic methods to basically upend the presidency of an incumbent? And it begs the question: how is he even finishing his term as a so-called competent president if he's not competent to run the next election?
There are several parts to that. I think we have to look at the context here. In their desperation to defeat Trump, and we must credit the bosses of the Democratic Party with being skilled professionals, extremely cynical, but good at what they do. And they prevented a schism in their own party between the Bernie Sanders left and the traditional Democratic center-left people, of whom Biden was an example, and they did it by saying, all right, we'll adopt Sanders' program completely, but Bernie, we can't have you. You're too far left wing, and the people won't vote for you. But we'll have Joe Biden, whom you know, who's a comfortable old shoe, and he's a good chap and one of the boys, and in the Senate for decades, and we'll get your program through, but Joe will be the president. So they had a kind of figurehead president and vice president who was just a gesture to voting blocs, a colored woman, and a Sanders program. And they patted themselves on the back for this splendid combination of different ingredients that through skullduggery on a scale never seen in American elections, they managed to get into office. But as is so often the case, when a complicated and cynical scheme, which has elements within it that are not at all legitimate, it doesn't always go as well as one hopes. And what they got was a radical program that was a disaster, and the public rebelled against it and felt they had not given a mandate for any such thing, and a figurehead leader who, it reminded me of General de Gaulle's statement about the last president of the Third Republic,
Yes.
Albert Lebrun, who came to visit him after de Gaulle came back in the liberation of Paris. And de Gaulle wrote, as chief of state, two things were missing. He was not a chief, and there was no state. And that's almost what we got with Joe Biden. And the public recognizes that they were duped, and they don't like it now. And so they managed to win an election, but it's been a terrible administration. I mean, practically no Americans approve of letting 10 million people in illegally. No Americans approve of multiplying Trump's inflation numbers by 6 in 18 months from 1.3 to 9, and the manner of the withdrawal from Afghanistan and so forth. I mean, the failings of this administration are as well known to every one of your viewers as they are to me. I didn't recount them. It's been a terrible series of fiascos in every major policy field, and I'm astounded the Democrats. I must say it illustrates the mad egotism of politicians that they actually think they have a serious chance of re-election on the record that they have in the last 4 years.
Well, and this is what is fascinating, is that they transition from Biden to Kamala Harris. I mean, she's played an instrumental role in, she's upheld a number of tie votes. She's the presiding officer of the U.S. Senate, of these disastrous policies. So they're really putting, and I hate to use the phrase, but kind of lipstick on a pig of policies that are going to continue, if not be worse, as she puts on her own personal stamp as a proudly progressive, a la California progressive that is even far left of Joe Biden. Is that your read on it as well?
But that's a good part of my read. The other part is, I think that to give him his due in tactical terms, Biden was so outraged at being undercut by especially Obama. I
Hmm.
mean, the theory is as long as it served him to claim to be Obama's senior colleague and just, well, like two peas in a pod with him,
Hmm.
um, he would claim it. But in practice, I think he always resented being treated with condescension, as vice presidents often are, by the way. And I mean, despite everything, Mr. Nixon didn't love every minute with General Eisenhower either, and Hubert Humphrey didn't enjoy LBJ as much as he claimed at times. But these things happen. But the once it became clear that he simply could not be renominated, he was determined that it would be his choice and not the Obama's or Clinton's choice who would be the next candidate. So he created the conditions that basically brought Kamala Harris in like an express train. I think Biden did on this one outwit his opponents. They wanted to get a stronger candidate. I don't know who, Whitmer or Shapiro, the government of Pennsylvania, or I mean, I don't think Newsom would be such a strong candidate. But I don't think they wanted Kamala on the question of his being able to finish his term. I have to agree with him here. I think it's a different thing altogether to seek to be the president for another 4 years to just finishing out 6 months of a term. And with what two of those months, there'd be a new president elect right there. He identified and ready to serve. I mean, I don't blame him for not wanting to resign this late in his term. He's struggled through this far. He can finish his term. I mean, unless his condition collapses, like Woodrow Wilson or something, and he can't function at all. But as of now, I can't say. I mean, I'm not a sympathizer with Biden, but like everyone else, he deserves to be treated decently, and I don't think there's any reason for him to be prevailed upon to resign now.
Hmm. So, as we look to the November election in the United States, it certainly will be very interesting to watch. And certainly in Canada, we have the question that is already being discussed in many quarters is the implications of either a Harris administration or a Trump administration. What are your thoughts in terms of the possibility of a Trump administration and its impacts on Canada?
Uh, Trump has no grievance with Canada. He likes Canada. It's not a country that he feels any hostility to, and so there need not be a problem with him, in my opinion. And the last thing that he would want to do is settle scores with Canada. He does have grievances with some countries, but we aren't one of them, fortunately. And I think he would always play fair with Canada. He'd just ask us to raise our contribution to NATO, and we've got essentially the same objectives in the world, and we have the advantage of sharing this great continent. Let's just do it fairly. And in point of fact, I don't think any American president is going to be a real problem for us. I mean, they have no grievance against us. We don't do anything to offend them except freeload at NATO. Our problem is to run our own country properly, which we haven't been doing. We can't blame anything on the Americans. I mean, we've tumbled down a long way in the prosperity per capita calculations in the world, and that's not the Americans' fault. They haven't tumbled down. We've done it. It's not because of them. It's because of us.
Exactly. Well, I want to thank you, Conrad Black, for your analysis and perspective. It's always interesting how you weave in the lessons of history with kind of a common sense analysis here. So thank you so much for joining us for this far-reaching conversation. We look forward to our next conversation soon.
Thanks so much, David. Always a pleasure, whether we're on television or having a drink late in the evening, to speak with you.
Thank you so much.
Always. Thanks. Bye.
Without open discussion and debate, you're not thinking, nor are you free. Comment below. We'd love for you to join the conversation.